Good?
Yeah, we're rolling.
All right. 5, 4, 3. Welcome to the Lions and Lambs podcast. This is episode number 1. And so we're just going to introduce ourselves and then sort of introduce the podcast to you and I guess the ministry that will be, or is, Lions and Lambs, and talk a bit about that, talk about a bit about where we're recording, and then we've got one discussion topic for the day. So I'll introduce myself, and then Brennan, you can introduce yourself. My name is Jonathan Barbo.
I said sounds good.
My name is Jonathan Barbo. I am the family pastor at Rolling Road Baptist Church. I'm a veteran, spent about 6.5 years in the United States Army, did a tour in Iraq, got out of the military, basically went into ministry, did 16 years of youth ministry. I owned a gym for about 3 years, and then got back into full-time ministry, and this is kind of where I'm at now. This is my son, Brennan.
Howdy. As he said, my name's Brennan. I'm the youth pastor at Rolling Road Baptist Church. So we have the what would you call it? Pleasure of doing ministry together.
I'm your boss.
I wouldn't say that, but we have the pleasure of doing ministry together, which is it's more fun than anything else. But I've been the youth pastor there for about 2.5 years at this point, I'd say. Been married coming up on 2 years in April, and I'm about to be a dad. Had a scare last night, but not ready just yet.
Thought you were going to be a dad last night.
I did too. So that's why I sound a little groggy, because we were at the hospital till 12. But
I should probably talk about my personal life a little bit. Married for 21 years.
Hey, don't screw that up on the internet now.
Married for 21 years, 3 kids. He's the first one. And then I got a 16-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter as well. So,
yep.
All right, let's talk about where we're recording the podcast.
Yeah.
We are at the Victory Military Surplus. It's located at 7913 Desert Street in Monroe, Louisiana. Tim Sherman is the owner. I'm sure we'll have him on the podcast at some point in time for an interview. He's got a lot of cool stuff in here. It's a military surplus. Lots of books, lots of aviation stuff. The museum is a partner, or I'm sorry, the military surplus where we are is a partner with the Chenault Aviation and Military Museum. And so a lot of aviation stuff in here, a lot of historical stuff in here. And then kind of, your military surplus type of stuff. You speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, I've enjoyed coming in here, quite often. There's, always new stuff that Tim's bringing in. And he just picks it up from, all of the military bases around here, that are getting rid of stuff. So if you have any surplus desires, I'm sure Tim, is either going to have it or he's going to be able to get it for you. As well as some other outdoor stuff. There's just some good camping stuff that he's got here, and outdoor clothes that I think any man would like this store. I know I do.
Yeah, maybe a cool place to bring your kids and let them pick up some military stuff that they think is cool. That was always a thing that was cool to me whenever I was a kid, was stopping at military surplus stores. I'm looking at that ghillie suit. I really want to get a ghillie suit.
Yeah,
just to have.
I've thought about that quite a few times.
I really like to show people how effective they are.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hey, we'll go put it on for one of the podcast episodes, see if we can see.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Some things that Tim does here at the store is he'll have like book signings. And then he is always honoring veterans. And so if you're a veteran and you come into the store, it's a cool place to hang out. You get some coffee. And just have a good conversation with Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as some of these programs that they do through the Chenault Museum that are really geared towards helping veterans, I think, just talk through some of their experiences in life and connecting with other veterans and people who can help them navigate through everything necessary to to be healthy. And,
Right. Yeah, that's some really important work that they're doing. I think also just to mention a few things that the museum does. They have the run for the red, white, and blue annual 5K. I think that's on Memorial Day.
Yeah.
I'm usually consumed with doing Murph on Memorial Day. They also do the red, white, and blue air show here at the Monroe Airport. And some other things. They have some other important dates throughout the year, things happening there at the museum that you should be aware of. I think you can follow the museum on Facebook. Yep.
Yes.
And so that's a good idea.
Absolutely. Can't thank Tim enough for letting us, I wouldn't say hijack, but just use.
Yeah. Definitely a cool place.
Space, yeah.
Cool space to be in. All right, let's introduce lions and lambs.
Yep. What is it?
Let's talk about this first. So just sort of where the name comes from, and it speaks to what our goal is. When we look at our culture today, we see a dichotomy, sort of with a massive chasm in between it, and that is that on one end of the spectrum, if you will, you have rough, tough, rugged men, who do what we would think of as manly or masculine things, right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes those men struggle with maybe being effective in the home, being the father that they need to be, the husband that they need to be, maybe having, the type of friendships and relationships that are healthy for any human being.
Yeah.
Also maybe being selfless, kind of being more sacrificial and sort of laying down their own lives for the sake of others. On the other end of the spectrum, we have men that are soft. They don't know how to be, sort of rough and tough and rugged and do some of the things that I think men have the responsibility to do in our culture, like protect, provide for. Maybe they've just spent too much time sitting in the bedroom playing video games and haven't gotten out and experienced the wilderness in various ways, or generally just been taught to do manly things, to take responsibility and ownership for their lives and the things that are under their care, whether that's, the stuff that they own or people that they should be, caring for and providing for. And so we just kind of see this dichotomy in our culture, and we want to speak towards that dichotomy to help men on both ends of the spectrum sort of embrace the whole of what it means to be a man.
Yeah. And I think that's, that plays right into why we named this podcast and this ministry Lions and Lambs, is because when we pattern this after the life of Jesus, I would say, who was the lion and the lamb at the same time, and was the perfect combination of the center of that dichotomy, I would say, of being rough and tough, but also being spiritually present,
Absolutely.
and available and in control of himself. I think one of the best words to describe the middle of that dichotomy is control, on either side of whether it's emotions or thoughts or actions, maybe anger, right? Being able to control is how you kind of get to being in the middle of that dichotomy as often as possible, which I think is, as followers of Jesus and as men, should be our goal.
Right. So with that said, let's speak to some of the things that we want to do. So obviously one of the things we're going to do is a podcast. Our plan for now is to do 2 podcasts a month. One is going to be, we're just going to say topical, where we're going to discuss various topics, just me and Brennan. And then the other one is where we're going to try to do interviews with men that we look up to, that we admire, that we respect, men who we believe are sort of living out being the lion and the lamb that they're called to be as a man, in their home, in our community, in the church, so forth and so on. You want to speak to that any?
Yeah, well, I would just say, like, to preface, look, I'm 20 years old. I'm certainly don't know half the things that make you a good man. So I'm here to learn just as much as I'm here to impart any knowledge that I would have about anything. So, um, you
Oh,
know,
sure. And we're here to learn
right,
and to continue to grow ourselves
right,
through the discussion that we're going to have and excuse me, the men that we're going to meet and interview and the events that we're going to do. Let's talk about that a little bit. So we want to do some training. We want to help men, take on the role of protector of their homes, and the people that they care for. Um, you know, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we did some church security training with the
Yep.
security team at our church,
super fun.
which was, it was fun. I think it was very informative. And, just trying to sort of challenge men to step up and be better in that capacity. That was firearm specific. We may also, bring in some guys at times that have more hand-to-hand self-defense experience and can help us with that and help other people with that. We're not only going to do, concealed carry type training, but we may also do some like AR classes, help men better understand the platform that is the AR and how to take care of it, how to use it, that type of stuff. You want to speak to any of that?
Yeah. I think there is unless you, I got to think through what I'm going to say here.
While you think about that, let me say this. I'll
Go
kind of
ahead.
just speak of my own experience. I was in the military. I was in combat arms. I was a combat engineer, and so I was familiar with weapons. I was actually my company's armorer for about 2 years, and I was the company's armorer while we went to Iraq. And so I maintained our weapon systems, fixed any minor problems that we had with those weapon systems, and also like our night vision devices and whatnot. And so I had a good understanding of firearms, but even whenever I came back into the civilian world from the military, I didn't really see or understand a need to carry a firearm. In America, we live in a relatively safe environment, but over the years, and I would say I got out of the military in 2005, and I would say over the course of about 10 years, so maybe from 2005 to 2015, we saw more and more incidents of, public shootings in spaces where you would never expect those types of things to happen in schools and churches and whatnot. And so for me, the importance, or it became more important for me to give some consideration to, man, maybe I should have a firearm on me so that I can respond to bad situations where someone who is seeking to do evil, wicked things and hurt others, innocent people, I can protect. I can be there to protect because I have the training that I needed. And so, it took some changing in my heart and in my mind for me to understand the need. And I think that the more men that, we can encourage to do the same thing, the better off our communities are going to be. So,
Yeah. I think what I was going to say to that was, I think especially down here in the South where almost everybody grows up with a firearm in the house, and most of those people use it to go hunting or doing whatever kind of outside activities. I think that there's a misconception that comes along with that um, it's a false confidence that you're going to be able to pick up a firearm or a different type of weapon and be able to effectively use that to defend yourself against another human being. And I'm not saying that that's not going to be useful, just being around firearms and using them for other purposes. However, there's a stark contrast in the tactical shooting world and almost all other uses for firearms. There's just a higher mental place that you have to get to, I think, before you will be able to use a firearm effectively And if you never do anything to get to that point of just uh, that level mentally of being prepared and ready to use a firearm or any other type of weapon against a person, right, to defend yourself, I think you're going to find yourself being starkly underprepared and maybe disappointed in your performance in that moment. The only problem with that then is that you either have to fully nerd out on firearms and just like live it, and everything on social media, that's all you follow and that's all you look at and that's all you do at home is you just play with your guns, right? But you dry fire and do all these sorts of things, or you have to pay a crap ton of money to go to classes that are oftentimes 5 hours away, at least from our location, to be able to gain this understanding of what it means and what it looks like to actually use a firearm in a defensive situation. So I think our goal is to kind of bridge that gap a little bit, bring something locally that we can use to equip and encourage men in our area, just to reach that higher mental awareness, to be better defenders and more prepared to defend your life, liberty, and happiness. Probably.
Right. Yeah. And so that brings up a good point that I would mention is that you don't have to be a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret, or even have military experience to be competent with firearms and
Right.
in a in a self-defense type of situation. You can attain that without having that kind of background. And so, like you said, we kind of want to be this local presence that can encourage men to step up there. There's plenty of, I would say, there's plenty of people out there who are training who have more of a national presence, but we really kind of want to localize and be here for you guys in that regard. We're also going to try to do some events periodically. I'm not going to speak to what those events are. We have some ideas, but I don't want to make any promises that we can't keep yet. So that'll come down the road. All right. So I've got one topic. Are we done there?
I think so. Did we talk about what we're going to talk about in the
Well,
podcast?
yeah. So on our topical podcast where it's just you and I, and maybe we'll have a guest on for that every so often, but we kind of just want to, just some topics that we're kind of going to tackle here is like faith, family, fitness, firearms, culture, politics, and we don't really want to box ourselves into anything, but those are kind of the general ideas that we're sort of going to talk about. Yeah. So today we got one topic that we're kind of going to discuss here, and who knows, this could be a 2-minute discussion, or
we got about 12 minutes left.
All right.
In our
or
time.
it could be a 12-minute discussion. So I was scrolling on Instagram the other day, and I don't remember what the original post was, like the image and the caption, but the most liked and commented on comment was that Jesus teaches men to be weak.
Oof.
And that got my attention. First off, the comment itself, Jesus teaches men to be weak, got my attention because, I immediately kind of had a knee-jerk reaction like, that's not right. But then I was really shocked to see how many men agreed with that comment. And there was no... And I'm not one to argue on social media. I'm not going to get into it on social media. I've learned that lesson a long time ago. But no one countered his comment. Nobody came back and said, hey, man, I think you're wrong. I think we need to talk about this. It was just, Jesus teaches men to be weak. What do you think about that?
I think it's absolutely wrong.
Why?
Well, I think that is the first. It's not always everybody's first defense, but it's the childish defense to someone that you're afraid of, right? Is, oh, well, you just start name calling. Mm-hmm. I'll just try to defeat you with my words. That way nobody else sees any credibility with you. And I think that's just a knee-jerk reaction to the actual power and strength that Jesus has. Because as we would agree, Jesus was the most manly man that has ever walked on this earth. And everything that Jesus did took more strength than any one human man can ever um, hope or wish to acquire and be able to employ through their thoughts and actions. Um, and I'll just give an example, such as I was reading through the Sermon on the Mount in Luke chapter 6 this morning, and it always hits me whenever I read that you shall love your enemies. It's counter to everything that the human flesh feels to do or think. And that's like, to me, that's what strength is. It's to be able to not just be led by your desires in your flesh, and to be able to counter that and do the opposite of what your mind and your body tells you should do, when oftentimes what they're telling you to do is wrong. Like, that takes way more strength to love your enemy than to hate your enemy.
Right.
Or even to fight against your enemy. To love your enemy is a different kind of otherworldly strength that Christ is allowing us to tap into through him. And that's just my first defense against the strength of Jesus, is that he had supernatural strength that we can't.
Well, yeah, there is that. but I think, so the last 2 weeks on Sunday nights, I've been teaching our life groups at the church, basically on physical health from the perspective of, let's look at Jesus' life and see kind of just how he lived in a physical sense. And so one of the things that I realized was that, what do we know about Jesus' life from the age of 12 to 30? The only thing we really know is that he was a carpenter, and really the word carpenter means builder, and so it's possible that he was either a carpenter, kind of in the traditional sense that we would think of, or he also may have been a stonemason. Either way, he was a blue collar worker, like he was physically capable of working.
Yeah.
But then he was also a scholar, right? Like, he studied and knew the Old Testament. Maybe to some degree it was just because he was Jesus and he was God and he knew the Word, but I think he also had to learn it as a child, and so he was, rough, tough, blue-collar worker, also a scholar, right? And so, just like Brennan said, like the most manly of men. I think, too, when you look at his life, of course, he lived before now with all of our creature comforts that we have.
Had to be a tougher individual.
He had to be a tougher individual. I think humans were tougher 200 years ago. But two, when you look at his ministry, he started his ministry with a 40-day fast. That takes incredible physical health and strength to get through. His ministry between the beginning of his ministry, where he did the 40-day fast, and the end of his ministry, which we'll come back to that in a second, he traveled all over Israel. From region to region, and if you've ever been to Israel, it's an incredible environment. You've got every type of environment just about that you could imagine, with the exception of like frozen tundra. You've got the hottest desert in the world, which is the lowest point on earth. You've got mountaintops that will just sporadically be snow-capped. I experienced that while I was in Israel, and he traversed this terrain all the time, back and forth from region to region. Traveled thousands of miles on foot. And then, too, you look at the end of his life where he was crucified. He endured what no other human being could possibly endure, to take upon himself the punishment that we deserved for our sins. Like, if that's not manly, I don't know what is. And if that's not strong, I don't know what is. And then he teaches us to live life in the same way.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, if you're not following God with everything that you have, like, that's strength.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I know Jesus teaches meekness, and we, for whatever reason, people think that means weakness, but that's not the same thing. Meekness is just being obedient. And in my mind, it also takes incredible strength to learn to be obedient to God.
I mean, it's like to get a dog to be meek to you is an incredible process that makes the dog stronger in their ability to resist their natural urges.
Right.
To do whatever. But also, one of the greatest examples of Christ's strength to me is The moment in the garden when they've come to take him away, and Peter draws his sword and he cuts off the ear of one of the Pharisees, and I believe it was a Pharisee. It could have been
Maybe a centurion.
maybe a centurion.
Yeah.
They were all there.
Yeah.
And Jesus turns to him, and knowing what's about to happen to him, right? That's the kicker. Jesus knows he's about to be put on
Trial.
a cross and crucified. And he turns to Peter, who is trying to defend his life, right? But because Jesus knows what has to be done, and he knows that it has to be him, it can only be him, he tells Peter to put the sword away. But then he says something else. He says, "Do you not know that I could call down more than 12 legions of angels," right? And that, when it's his knowledge of the strength that he actually has, the authority that he actually has to call down 12 legions of angels to come down to this earth, it could have wiped all of humanity off of the face of the earth in that moment, for all intents and purposes, right? And it would have been totally justified, but it also would have been a clear example of the actual authority and power and strength of God and Christ in that moment. But instead, in some supernatural way, right, he showed even more strength to say, I could do that, but I'm not going to.
It's not the Father's will.
Because I love you.
Right.
And I know that I have to die for you in a few hours, you know? So let me go through with this. Like that.
That's strength.
That is a whole nother level of strength that I could only pray I can be able to embody, you know?
Right. Yeah. All right. Where are we at on time?
We got 3 minutes left. So what do you want to talk about?
I think that's good. I don't know.
You
You
think
got
it's
something?
good? I thought I did, but now I don't think I do.
Yeah, I think it's good. We need to find an outro.
What?
An
What needs-
an outro where we
Oh,
close.
I get
where
that.
say
Are we
goodbye.
saying something?
I don't know. Do you have one?
Goodbye, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.